Hello, everyone. It's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and welcome to the Wasteland, my weekly show where I take a deep dive into a particular film. And we're shaking things up a little bit here in our series for Wes Anderson and talking about one of his short films, which honestly he's made a decent amount of them. So we'll be having some of them sprinkled in. And this one isn't even from Roald Dahl, which he certainly did a bunch of them. But joining me, very special guest, my friend, also actor, filmmaker, Susan K. Heaney. Thank you so much for coming on.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you. I love welcome to. That's great. It's
Yeah,
exciting.
there you go. I have to keep coming up with different titles that have Wasteland in it because eventually I'm going to run out. Of at least ones that make sense. But this is this is honestly my favorite show that I do. I just
Yeah.
like the idea of taking these deep dives into these directors, and it's so funny because I started this show like 210 episodes ago, with me just sitting in front of my camera talking about Coen Brothers movies because they're my favorite. And then by the time Kubrick, well, towards the end of the Coen Brothers series, I started having guests come on, and it wasn't just me talking at the camera. And then I did Kubrick and Scorsese and Spielberg, and then John Carpenter was a fun little aside, and then over a year and a half of John Ford. And now we
Oh.
have made it to Wes Anderson. So, and we'll be talking about his short film Hotel Chevalier. But for those who haven't tuned into the show before, we have three segments. So we always like to do some coming attractions for the opening weekend for the Friday this releases, which is February 7th, 2025. We already made it in a month, which is crazy. And then we'll get to our feature film and then have some recommendations. So this weekend is interesting because one, it's Super Bowl weekend, which is usually a horrible weekend for movies.
Mm.
Box office usually is not very strong this weekend. And it just happens to be the weekend right before Valentine's Day, which for some reason this has the Valentine's Day releases instead of next weekend that has Captain America and Paddington. So
If only I were here for Paddington Day.
Oh, I love Paddington so
Those
much. I'm
movies
very
are
excited
perfect.
for that.
They're so good. Yeah.
But so this weekend we do have a new Valentine's Day slasher, Heart's Eyes, coming out, and some interesting releases in terms of indies from Armand, which is a new Norwegian film coming, and Parthenope, which is a new Paolo Sorrentino film out of Italy, and even an Irish thriller starring everybody's of well, maybe second favorite Irish actor right now behind Colin Farrell, and that's Barry Keoghan, coming from Mubi. But we're both on the same page, and we're both very excited about Love Hurts, starring Ke Huy Quan and Ariana DeBose. But Suke, what are you excited most about Love Hurts?
I mean, you know when you're going to see a movie and you're watching all the
Mhm.
trailers, and I always give thumbs up, thumbs down, or thumbs middle. And I kind of
Yeah,
make whoever is at the movie with me vote on the trailers. And I will never miss a trailer. Like I will not be that kind of person who walks in late. I get there early for my snacks. Yeah, we gotta see what's coming
yeah,
and see what they've paired with the movie too. Like I always find that to be insightful, you know?
yeah.
And when I saw the Love Hurts trailer, I got just a jazzed
Mhm.
feeling in my body. Like I was like, yes, it looked like a romp. It looked like fun. You know, I live in LA. The beginning of this year has been really rough in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And so I was like, this looks like something I just need to sort of enjoy and laugh and, be mesmerized by.
Well, yeah, and the trailer's great. It really captures this tone of like this is has some great action. Ke Huy Quan doing some great martial arts and
Yes.
stuff like that. It has romance. It
Ah,
has humor. Low key, one of my favorite comedic like character actors right now is Marshawn Beast Mode Lynch, who was
my God.
hilarious
Yes.
in Bottoms and
Yes. I loved him in that.
Murderville.
Yes.
Which his whole episode of Murderville with Will Arnett was hilarious.
Amazing. Amazing.
It wasn't quite on Kumail Nanjiani episode level, which I think was probably the best one. But
Yeah.
Marshawn Lynch is so funny, and he's one of the henchmen in this. And I'm a huge fan of Ariana DeBose. I absolutely love her.
Yeah.
And her song from Argyle. Electric Energy was my number one song on Spotify from last year, despite the fact that she's in the movie for like 4 minutes. But
You know wrong though. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like, yeah.
exactly. And this hopefully will make me very happy coming out of Craven, which completely wasted her, and was like, no. But
Yeah,
this looks like so much fun. Spoiler, I did actually see this tonight, but I'm not going to say anything about it
I was gonna
because,
say it wasn't.
but it's an 83-minute action rom-com. So like, and what's interesting, it's from a now yet another stunt coordinator turned director.
Mm.
So, the action's going to be great. So,
It looked just very stylized and very specific. And I love a movie that knows what it is and commits to it, right? I just, even from the trailer, I was like, oh, this movie is doing like its own thing.
I guess the one thing that I'll say about it is it's an interesting fusion of exploitation films,
Mm-hmm.
spaghetti westerns, and martial arts films. It's just like somebody loves 70s cinema
Oh,
and just
I
like,
love 70s cinema. It's my favorite decade of cinema.
yo,
So that's, yeah, I could sort of see that in the trailer. It just was like
mhm,
taking risks and wholly unique.
yo,
I can't wait.
absolutely.
Now I'm even more.
So well, you all go check that out in between, watching the Super Bowl this weekend. Because that's where the vast majority of people will be Sunday night. Just based off of ratings. Let's get into our feature film, which is a short film, but it's the main focus of our episode today. So this is Hotel Chevalier, and this was from 2007, written by Wes Anderson. This was his first project that he wrote by himself, which is interesting because first couple films with Owen Wilson, and then Noah Baumbach with Life Aquatic, and then Darjeeling Limited was where he first foray into writing with Roman Coppola, who he would keep writing with in a lot of projects, and Jason Schwartzman. But this is indeed starring Jason Schwartzman and Natalie Portman. This is supposed to be a prologue to the Darjeeling Limited, but it didn't originally start that way. This was supposed to be its own little thing that he was making while living in Paris with Jason Schwartzman, while getting ready for Darjeeling Limited. And then he had a realization that the character that Jason Schwartzman's playing really fit the bill for one of the brothers that's supposed to be in Darjeeling Limited. So he just cast Jason Schwartzman in it and then connected it. So, and there you go. And that's how we have it together. Which is interesting too, because the studio had no idea about this short film
Hmm.
and he made it. And then it was just like, well, we have this too, which
Oh,
is
yeah, I thought it
interesting.
was like self-financed, right?
Yes.
That's so cool. Yeah.
Which, if you have access to a beautiful hotel that just so happens to look like it's from a Wes Anderson movie,
Yeah.
and then get to do that. So there you go. It was indeed shot on location in Paris with a very small crew. And like if you watch the film, which you can watch on YouTube, it's a very small, like closed location in terms of the film. So you could definitely see that. But yeah, it was interesting because they got Natalie Portman hot off of Closer was like
Mhm.
the big film where it's just like, I want her to be in this movie.
Yeah.
Which is wild because thinking back, like in 2004, Jason Schwartzman and Natalie Portman were both still pretty young, despite
Mhm.
the fact that they both started as like obviously Jason Schwartzman was a teenager, but like Natalie Portman had been acting since she was a
Yeah.
girl with Leon the Professional and such. But so, Kate, what are your general thoughts on Hotel Chevalier?
I honestly loved it. I wore yellow in honor of the movie. Yellow is such a
Nice.
prominent color in the movie, and my bedspread is yellow, but that was there anyway. Um, you know, just visually, it's extremely beautiful.
Yes.
The acting is wonderful. It's very lean. Like there is
Yes.
very little dialogue, to be honest. But I sort of just I like this is gonna sound weird. Um, it made me feel like a movie, like I wanted to eat it. I found
Mhm.
it yummy. I found it sad. I found it moving. I found it like as soon as I finished, I kind of wanted to watch it again, which I think is a sign of a good movie.
Yes. And And it also is like 13 minutes, so you do have that ability to just like pop it right back in and run it back again. And obviously, a film like this that's like set in the small setting, very minimalist, at least from like dialogue and stuff like that. It's still very ornate. It is very much Wes Anderson and has that look to it. And boy, this is a gorgeous looking hotel.
Oh,
Um, for sure. So somewhere to go when you go to Paris. But this dynamic and the two actors, which Jason Schwartzman has such a very specific vibe to him,
yeah.
and he's just so sad in
So
this.
kind of monotone in a lot of it too, as well, But yeah, definitely like brooding and sad. And there's this like early image of him just like in the bed, and you can tell he's not doing great, right?
Yes.
Um, and he's got all these like books stacked on the bed. So I'm like on one side of the bed, like he's sleeping on one, and the books are sleeping on the other side, kind of. And I just because it's Wes Anderson, I was like try to zoom and like see what I'm like, what are the titles of the books? Like I just
What's he
need to know
reading?
that. Right. Because he has all these little weird things and she comes in later and kind of plays with some of the stuff in his
Yeah.
and there's like a little music box and things and um I just kind of wanted to catch every detail.
And I think his even like his hairstyling and everything is done so perfectly. That mustache and like
Oh,
the longer hair just accentuates just the sadness of just like
yeah.
and just even that feeling of
Like
like
draws the milk down. Like,
yes,
yeah.
exactly. And it's because it's one of those kind of mustaches that kind of sag down.
Yeah.
And it just kind of like brings his whole face down in terms of like how he's feeling. And like this is such an interesting and relatable story. Because
Oh,
like
yeah.
if you've ever had a relationship that ended and then you're like, is it over? And
Yep.
then you see that person again and you're like, should I have seen this person again?
I mean, yes.
And this captures that vibe so perfectly because there's something awkward about it, but there's also something familiar about it. And I just love Natalie Portman's energy. She like comes in and like goes straight to the bathroom, she's like brushing her teeth.
Love the brush of the teeth. It's just she's so comfortable in herself. She's so
Yeah.
connected to every moment. Like I think when people like talk about like movie stars, like she is a movie star. She lights up every
Yes.
frame. She's also like a phenomenal actress and it has been since
Yes.
the professional. I like fell in love with her when I saw it. I was like, "Oh my God." And oh, what's the movie? Something Girls. She's with Tim Robbins and she's ice skating.
I don't
Oh,
know if I've
beautiful
seen this
girl.
one. Beautiful
Oh,
girl.
she's really good in it. Yeah. Like she just is luminous and she's
Yeah.
luminous in this movie too, Um, to go back to your other point really quickly, like, yes, I'm so glad that you said that because I felt that too. Usually when I'm done with a relationship, this is just a personal anecdote. I'm kind of
Mhm.
like done. You know what I mean? I'm like one of those people. However, that hasn't always been, like definitely like not always been the case when I was in my youth. And this definitely is so specific because they're like in France and they
Yes.
are like he's wearing a suit in the movie and they're definitely like in a different life than I've ever been in.
Mhm.
But I think like a Greta Gerwig point that she made once is like the more specific, the more relatable actually.
Yeah.
And so rather than keeping it broad, like the more like totally like this is what these weird little moments of him trying to order a grilled cheese. It's kind of his first line in the movie and he's like, how do you say grilled cheese? And they say it in French and he's like, yeah, that. um like it's so weird because I write short films, right, and I write
Yeah.
feature films too. It's like why do you put in the things you put in?
Yeah.
And
Well, I feel like a grilled cheese is such a sad
for
comfort kind of food.
yes,
Like, I just want grilled cheese,
yes,
and
like
you
I
just
need like
feel that
yes,
energy.
totally. So it's like I remember someone explaining to me, like, if you have a short film, there's no real estate. Like, you have very little real estate.
Yeah.
So if you're going to put anything in there, it better tell something.
Yes.
So then now when I
And
watch them, I appreciate that more.
well, and in this one in particular, there's so many little details. And even when they start getting physical with each
Yeah.
other, and like it's a very interesting dynamic in that moment because she's going like she takes her clothes off right away, and he's like, there's still like he's still clothed. There's still that reluctance because you feel like obviously we don't know exactly what happened between them, but what we get, at least what I gather from this, is like she's done things
Yeah.
that has harmed this relationship, and he is hurt. He is vulnerable. He is in a state where it's like he doesn't want it to end, but is trying to be like, this isn't good for me.
Yeah.
But then he so comfortably comes back into his space here. And then it feels so familiar. It feels so comforting. And
Yeah.
just the way that she carries herself is very alluring too. So,
Oh my God.
like,
Her voice when she calls him
yeah,
is like, "Wow." And it's like, oh my God. And you can see in his, like, he's like, a charge has already been set, you know?
well, and she already made the decision. She's coming. He's like, I didn't invite you to come here. It's like, well, can I? And
Yeah.
it's just like, you know the answer to that question now. And
Yes. That's one thing I wanted to talk about, which is like that the power shifts a lot in the movie
yes.
in a very subtle way, right? Because when they first start getting physical, they are like looking at the food and they just start like kissing like really passionately and
Yes.
it and like very loudly, by the way, too, which does not bother me. I'm not like I'm like that's great. It's very human, but just like there's music over so much of this movie, and then when they're kissing, it's like very mouth like a lot of mouth noises,
Yeah.
telling its own musical story. And then she's on the bed and she like kicks up her heel and she's
Yeah.
got these like fabulous like black heeled lacy boots, right? And she just like looks at him like unzip them.
Yes.
And he's holding some power there, right? Even,
Mm.
like, and he does, and then she throws up the other leg and he unzips it. And it's just, I was like, oh my God, like, what a thrill. And
Yeah.
but then it shifts again and he's sitting on the bed and he's wearing all of his clothes and she's not,
Yeah.
and it was so interesting how it just kept and then shifting again like they're on the bed and then she's on top and she's definitely like the one who's sort of more driving things in that moment.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed that part of it, and it's without it, we were talking about Baby Girl very quickly before we jumped on, but it's like slight like power games that they're playing with each other. And
Exactly. And that was extremely sexy moment where she
oh,
just picks up her boots and is just like basically like take them off. And
I love
he's just like and
I love
he's both so very happy and sad to do it because there you still
oh
feel that reluctance that he's
yeah.
gonna regret this later.
One thing about like Wes Anderson movies that I have always thought and kind of felt, and then I hadn't seen this before you asked me to do this episode, so then I've watched it a couple of times now.
Yeah.
There's very little sex in the movies, right? Like,
Yes.
and like in Darjeeling Limited, there's actually he's in another sexy scene with the woman on the train,
Yes.
and but it's less intimate than this for sure.
Yes.
But it's sexy. But it's just an interesting, and it doesn't mean anything. Like it's great to be a filmmaker who has sex in your movies, and it's great to be a filmmaker who doesn't have sex in your movies. Apparently, the Gen Zs don't want any more sex in movies. Did you hear that?
Apparently.
They only want platonic relationships. But anyway, that's fine. So yeah, it was just, but that was so charged and
Yeah.
so spicy that I was like, oh, I see. Like in a short, it's no.
Well, and that's what's fascinating because like I'm such a big Wes Anderson fan. I hadn't watched this. So like my experience is all of his feature films and also his Roald Dahl short films where it's just like there is no sex.
Yeah.
And every because like so many of his films are about sad, lonely people.
Yes.
And it's like even just a kiss is a big deal in a Wes Anderson film because everybody starts so distant. And one of the most moving connections I feel like in his films are like you have something like Moonrise Kingdom where it's like they're two kids,
Yes.
or even just like between Zero and Agatha in
Yeah.
Grand Budapest.
Yeah.
And I don't need a sex scene. All I have to hear is we were happy here, at least for a little while. And then I just feel all of it. And that movie makes me want to
Yes.
cry.
Yes.
But like this was a very different feeling, and this was sexy, and also good for Jason Schwartzman, who like which get like with Natalie Portman, and then I don't remember what the actress's name who plays the one of the staff on that train, but also a very attractive woman. And just like this sad sack is doing really well for himself.
Women are drawn to those slow, burn, tortured types, and then he's obviously very passionate in both movies. So there's like
Oh
a
yeah.
simmering underneath of that sadness that is something.
Well, and it's so interesting where this film ends with these two characters because there's a it's such a very interesting dynamic because like you got to have that slow motion. Love that Wes Anderson slow motion there, and it's very particular with like Natalie Portman's completely naked, like
Yeah,
leaning
yeah,
on like this bureau or dresser, whatever it is,
yep.
and it's like going out to the window and just have like looking upon Paris, and that's kind of like where this leaves off, and it's just like they almost went there
Well,
together physically,
I know. So
and then it
then,
doesn't happen.
but do you think at the end when they rush back inside that they're going to? Because, they're looking at Paris, they're looking at the city, it's beautiful, it's a beautiful shot. And then they kind of rush inside. And both times I was like, are they going back to like get it on? Or are they going to go explore the city? Like I don't know.
But I'm imagining, especially based off of Darjeeling Limited, which that's an interesting thing that this literally is a prologue because we see how he's acting
Yes.
post this, which
Yes.
is keeping tabs on her,
Get
following
the
up her
grades down. Yeah.
messages and stuff. So like he's still attached,
For sure.
and I would not be shocked if he wound up making the bad decision to get physical in that moment, where it's just like he knows that he shouldn't have, and but
Yeah.
it's that thing where it's like this gives a lot of context to like because his brothers give him a lot of crap in
Oh yeah.
Darjeeling Limited about like him not letting it go. And then this film gives so much context because you understand why. She's the kind of woman that he really struggles being able to just let go.
Wouldn't you? I mean, like, it's Natalie
Yeah,
Portman.
exactly.
And she's like, but yes, I agreed. I rewatched Darjeeling Limited just with the thought of this being the prequel, and I'd seen it
Yeah,
before. And to be very honest, and I love it, and I love the India of it, and I love
yeah,
the colors and the vibrancy and the relationship, and it's so weird and quirky. It really makes me very sad, both times that I've watched it. Like when the child dies, sorry, not to give a spoiler.
yeah,
I like find it hard to recover from it. Like I find it
yeah.
hard to then go back to the dad's funeral and like I'm like, ah, I'm like, couldn't we just have had his head hurt? Like I don't know. I'm trying to
Well,
rewrite it.
and that was such a visceral moment.
My
And you
God.
don't get a and you don't get a whole lot of them. And this was still early Wes Anderson, where there was still a semblance of visceral realism in some of
Yes.
the films. Because, like, you don't get that really in Asteroid City anymore or French Dispatch. It's completely you're in a different plane of existence.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
But that sequence in Darjeeling might be one of the most visceral, real moments in any of his films, and it just hits.
The dad when he kind of faints in the water. Oh my God, it like
Yeah,
hurt me. And both times I was like really enjoying it, and then I was like, oh my God, he's coming. Like I just, like
yeah,
you. But so anyway, after the rewatch, I was thinking like I kind of would love prequels for both of the other brothers as well. Because
interesting.
yeah, don't you think like you hear about the motorcycle accident, but you don't know exactly what happened. You kind of
Yeah,
think, but and for Adrian Brody's character, like I really want to see when you like found out the wife was pregnant when you were leaving her. Like
yeah,
I need Wes Anderson, if you're listening, we need two more prequels, please.
there you
We
go.
can, what is that called when you like we'll crowdfund. We'll help you
Yeah.
crowdfund for it. Yeah.
Which, to be honest, I think it'd be okay. Yeah,
I don't know if you could do them in a one location. Well, Adrian Brody, the motorcycle, you're gonna have to pay for stunts and stuff. You know what I mean?
either that Netflix money or Focus Feature,
Oh yeah.
whichever one.
I want the two prequels because I'm so curious, and then it's funny because it almost then feels when watched Darjeeling again, weighted toward me looking at his character more because I had
Yeah.
that glimpse.
Well, and I think it's interesting because in general, you think about like why did this get a prequel, but it wasn't meant to be.
I
So
know
like
you're
this
right.
came out organically in a very interesting way. But I would love to see more context to Adrian Brody's situation. I feel like the short with Owen Wilson would probably just be more like it's like an little action short because like I kind of got it. He's the one that you kind of get an idea of like this is it, and this is just like he's just been that overbearing brother this whole entire time.
You could do like that one as like a 3 minute. You're totally right. Like him making the
Yeah,
decision, driving his motorcycle and, doing what he does.
exactly. And pressuring his assistant,
Oh,
um,
yes.
which Wally Wolodarski, and just love the fact that he pops up as was it Kylie in Fantastic Mr. Fox.
Yes. Yes. So
That
funny.
that's one of my ones that I'm most excited to be doing, which I think that's my next episode.
Oh, good.
One of my next episodes because like I love that film so much and it's just so much fun. But I love the fact that this short felt like it was new and fresh and different for Wes Anderson in a way that you don't really see this in any of others of his films. So, that's an opportunity to be able to explore something a little bit different, and I think he nailed it.
I think he nailed it. And I think, like that quote, like restriction gives freedom. And in
Mhm.
a way, so you have two people in a hotel room, you have the person answering the phone at the very beginning, but just for really
Yeah.
context of, and the person who brings in the food, but that's it. So it's so lean that it, in a way, I don't know, lets you explore like real human interaction. One of my favorite moments, and I'm gonna get the line wrong, but I'm sure you know it. So, is when she's like on top of him, and it seems like they're about to have sex, and she says like, "If we do this, it's gonna really hurt me tomorrow." That line, and he says like, "Good," like like I'm not, basically like I don't feel bad about that, and like it's a very charged moment, and then also she's got these like bruises on her body
Mm.
which we as the audience see, right? Because like there's a shot where we're like,
Yeah.
oh, that's interesting. And then he notices it a little bit later,
Mhm.
and it's never explained. And it's never
No.
like what I think is that she's having sort of some roughish sort of interactions with someone else. I think it's consensual, I hope, please. But like, that she's
Yes.
having an affair that's more you know, rough.
Which
Baby girl esque, maybe.
I'm looking up some of the quotes because there's some really great quotes in this. Um, if we F, I'm gonna feel like shit tomorrow. And
Yep.
he's like, that's okay with me.
That's it. That's okay with me. Yeah,
Yep.
perfect.
Well, and that this their dynamic is so interesting through these quotes because she says, whatever happens in the end, I don't want to lose you as my friend. I promise I will never be your friend,
That's
no
one of my
matter
other
what,
favorites. Yep.
ever.
Yes. And
And
it just
I think
kind of,
that shows a divide in terms of their perspective on this situation.
yeah, it's so interesting because you almost wonder, like, again, we need a prequel to the prequel. Like, how did they meet? What was it for? Like, did they, because they're still, even just from the short, such an odd pairing, and not
Yes.
like in any way physical, like, but physically, like he is in like the suit and stuff, and she's much more free, and but like just personality, they're such an odd pairing.
Exactly. And I think what that says about their relationship on some level is that he knows if he's in this relationship, he needs her wholly. And I think she's the kind of person that, like, she might be having those other kinds of little flings with
Yeah, yeah.
others and stuff like that. And he's stable. I feel like in general, and like he's the kind of person that you can come back to.
Yes.
And
Oh,
he doesn't want to be her island to like come back to.
yeah, like he draws her a bath, right? Like that's the
Yep.
moment. And you see him filling the bath and she's like, I'll be there in 30 minutes. Her voice is so
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Um, you see him scramble and clean up and and then you see him run a bath and you think, oh good, he's gonna take a bath because he needs one, I think, because he's been laying in this hotel bed for too long. And then he does, and it's for her.
Yeah.
And so it is that caretaking. She's kind of flitting around. She's like, "How long are you here for?" I'm gonna mess this line up too. But he basically is like, "How long are you here for?" And that moment was like, oh, you feel like if she says a week, he'll stay for a week. And she says, I'm
Yeah.
leaving tomorrow. And you can tell he's probably leaving tomorrow. Right? Like, it was an interesting.
that kind of dynamic. And then she says, "Are you running away from me?" And he's like, "I thought I already did."
Yeah.
Because she's not letting it go, and
No.
he's in the place where he needs to let it go,
Yes.
and she's making it very hard.
Yes. She said you weren't that hard to find. So how did you find him? You weren't that hard to find. Like she put in the work to find him, and you just wonder, well then, and it's so fun then to watch Darjeeling after and see her pop up at the end of it, right?
Yep.
And for people who watch that and never, which it was me, I'd watched that and never seen
Like
this, and I
in
was
the
like,
context and be like, how'd they
like
get
in the movie
Natalie Portman to be in like one shot in this movie?
with no dialogue, just in the hotel
Yeah.
bed in that robe.
Hmm.
Like maybe she went back there to look for him, you
And nope,
know?
he's not there.
Right.
And she said, "I love you. I never hurt you on purpose." And he said, "I don't care."
Yeah.
There's a lot of hurt there. And but there's still a lot of vulnerability, and that's what makes it so challenging and interesting. But no,
Yeah.
this is a special little film.
I think
And
so too.
and I appreciated this conversation because like it's always interesting when you get a chance to talk about a film for the first time because like there's plenty of films I've talked to people endlessly about. And sometimes like getting a chance to actually like talk to something like I just watched this on my own. I hadn't talked to anybody about this. So
Yeah.
like getting this opportunity and thinking about this and like talking out all these different layers really gave me a much stronger appreciation for what Wes Anderson was doing here.
Yeah, it's so upon the first watch, I felt kind of sad and I felt also like, yum, I want to be in Paris. And I felt like powerhouse performances and really interesting lines that made me get excited in my body. Like, oh my God, like, I don't
Yeah.
care. Like, lines like that that are just seemingly simple, but when you have a great actor do them with subtext and with these beautiful shots. And by the way, I love like also the Wes Anderson sort of like pan shot and where he puts everyone in his frame is always off. Like he put her like they're just a little off. He's kind of in the middle and she's like slightly to the right. And so they don't exactly match, which is so Wes Anderson too. Um, so combined, that's how I felt the first time. I also felt like it was romantic and I felt like I wanted a macaroon or whatever, and I wanted to learn French, which like I'm a huge French New Wave Agnes Varda fan, and I've never felt like I wanted to learn French before this short film. And they don't
I,
speak French in the movie.
yeah.
Really?
This and Darjeeling made me want to see him explore more other places because
Yes.
usually it's either America
Yep.
or something made up. So
Right.
like Grand Budapest Hotel obviously is pulling upon a lot of things, but it's made up.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Like this isn't a real place.
Yeah.
I wish it was. I would go.
Such a,
Um,
yeah, no, I know. It makes you really want to go there. And like you said, like if you're in France, go see this, Paris, go see this hotel. Like they should keep this room as like an homage to this movie. That would be so cool. You can stay in the
yeah,
Chevalier, you know?
and you can make a lot of money. Uh, just from a business standpoint, they're like, you want to stay in this Wes Anderson room? So
Yes.
it would definitely
But
get a
then
lot of
when
people's
I watched,
attention.
yeah. When I watched it again, I felt
Mhm.
like it was much spicier than I did the first time. Because I think the first time I was so nervous for these two.
Mhm.
And I felt really sad for him.
Yeah.
And the second
Well,
time it was
well,
spicier.
and you can definitely tell that he was nervous about this whole
Yeah.
situation for sure.
Yes. Yes.
But yes, so especially if you're a huge Wes Anderson fan and you haven't watched this yet, go to YouTube. It's 13 minutes. It's not going to take a big chunk of time out of your life, but it's certainly worth it for sure.
For some reason, just pro tip, on YouTube, it's like quiet at the beginning, like when the Criterion ad comes, like the beginning comes on, there's no sound. And so I tried to start it like 8 times. Like I was like, I can't, there's no sound. And I was turning my volume, I was turning my computer on and off. So everybody just hang in there for like 30 seconds because the ad before also has no sound. Like, I don't know how it happens. Yes, but as soon as the movie starts, it's filled with sound and the music is excellent and another character in and of itself.
Mhm. I have to do, I didn't do this research. I have to check. I'm wondering if this is on, I think Darjeeling has a Criterion release. I would assume this would be on it.
I think
Like,
it is.
I would assume so. See, now I feel like I probably have to go buy that version of the movie.
Yes, you
Just
need it. You need it. You
yes.
don't need space for it, but you need it.
See, and I was just talking to somebody else about this. I've been getting really into like I went through all my Criterion and all of my Disney discs to see what other films are on these because like they have short films and stuff like
Yeah,
that
yeah.
just so that I know. And there's a lot of interesting ones that I found on my wide range different Criterion. And I imagine like this would be a great one to get so that you can have both the film and this prologue short film to go along with it.
Love it.
But now, obviously, we recommended this, but we have some more recommendations for you.
Oh yeah.
So, Suke, what would you like to recommend to everybody?
I will say, everybody, please go watch Anora. It's completely different than this movie, but in a great way. It's also so specific. The movie opens with, oh, both movies have buns in them, butts, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it opens with buns. This movie doesn't open with buns, Chevalier, but they're in there.
Yep.
Um, and so it just opens in the strip club, and it's
Yep.
like you're already like, I'm in this world. And I think I very much appreciate a movie and a filmmaker who has a signature style. And while Wes Anderson's is more specific, I think, like Sean Baker and Anora, he
Mm.
definitely has a signature style and way of storytelling that I think is important. And I also think her performance is just her performance. And what is his name? He's nominated for Best Supporting Actor, and I love him.
Um,
Talking about,
yeah, he was so good in the well, honestly, there's the trio of them are
yes,
so great together.
it's so
But
true.
like this film, it makes me sad that a lot of steam for this for award season
I know.
has cooled down because it seems like, or at least until recently, because there's a lot of controversy swirling around some of these films for the Oscars, but it looked like it was Amelia Perez and Brutalist for a
I
while there, and then
know.
both of them, to varying degrees of stuff coming out,
Yeah.
either from the actors or just from the filmmaking perspective, has shifted. I'm kind of hoping that means that Honora might kind of like swoop in there
It could. It's a
because like this is so I I've seen an obscene amount of movies from last year. I've seen like 860 movies from 2024,
no, you
and
have
this
not.
was I have, and this is in my top five. Like this
Wow.
is how much I love this movie,
Yes, me too. I think we messaged
and
on Instagram a little bit.
yeah,
Yeah.
but it's just and Mikey Madsen, I would love to see her win Best Actress. It's it's challenging because I want Sean Baker to win Best Director. I want this to win Best Picture. But then I'm kind of rooting for the substance for some
I
of
know.
those things too. And it's just like
I know.
it's I I don't know if I could be hurt again like I was. I'm probably one of the biggest Banshees of Inisherin fans you're gonna meet.
Oh,
And
incredible.
they lost literally everything to everything everywhere all at once. I couldn't even be
Oh, yeah,
mad
that's
because
yeah.
I'm
I,
like, this is one of the most original, interesting films that Academy's ever given a bunch of awards to, and I'm like, I can't be mad about it. But I just wanted Banshees to win everything.
and like a huge, I hear you and I feel you, and that movie, I think about it and I think about shots from that movie. Like I will think about Natalie Portman's foot in the frame and him unzipping her boot,
Yeah.
but like and I'm a huge Oscar fan, but it's just like it's not your year. I like, you know what I mean? Like, so I think, but it
Yep,
could be, but I think it is Demi Moore's year for like years of work and years of
absolutely.
and being brilliant, of course, but like
Yeah,
Madsen
Madison.
is, I mean, chef's kiss, like tour de force performance. When we talk about a performance that leaves, like she ate and left no crumbs, as the youth are saying, she ate and left no crumbs. There's a scene, everyone will see it. You probably already has. And when she beats up the guys and they're trying to like tie her up with like a phone cord and stuff. She's just so feral and bold, and like you don't doubt for a second that she can do it. And if you see her in life,
No,
complete,
complete different.
yeah,
And,
Transformative.
yeah, and Yura Borisov,
That's it.
who plays Igor,
Ah,
he's so good in this, and he
yes.
makes so many little moments with like poking of the bat, like
Oh my God.
shattering that
Yes.
one last, or just a
Yes.
chucking the bat, and that final scene
Oh,
between the two of them, there is so much packed in to that scene, and I'm just like, I was in awe of just
yeah.
how powerful, how the writing, the directing, and the acting in that all just came together to just create something so impactful.
And funny and bold and edgy and awkward and
Yeah.
I laughed a lot at the beginning. Also, we were driving through Vegas on our way to our in-laws, and we're kind of running late. And I was like, oh God, I gotta go see the chapel. And I was like, you gotta let me out of the car, babe. Like, I gotta go take pictures of the chapel. And I did because it's exactly like I was like, we're here. Like, it's
Yeah.
so fun. Yes.
But
So Anora is my please watch it, everybody. And just go. I like if you haven't seen it, just go in knowing nothing. I went in really knowing very little.
and yeah, and honestly, that's how you should watch all movies. The
Here,
best of your
after we just
ability.
told everyone everything that we feel about it.
And this is a perfect segue into, because usually what I do is I recommend a new film, a watch list film, and one of my movies that I've rewatched recently. Do not, if you can avoid it, don't even look at the posters for Companion and or the second trailer, because if you only saw the teaser for this movie, it's so compelling and mysterious and interesting. And I'm so mad that I saw the second trailer, because and then the poster started coming out and it's just like, and the
I
taglines just like, what are you doing?
It's not even my kind of movie, and I saw the first trailer, and I was like, I'm
Yeah,
definitely going to see this. I will have to like swallow any horror aversion that I have, and I will be seeing this.
it is not that kind of scary.
Oh, good.
Like
Okay.
it's a little slasher-y. That's probably the it's very funny
Good.
at
Yes.
times too. And it has a lot to say
Mm.
about abusive relationships
Mm.
and stuff like that. But I will not tell you through which allegorical medium that they're doing that, because you shouldn't know going into this movie what it's really
Got it.
about. But I remember seeing the second trailer and being like, oh, that's what okay. It like stuff started clicking in terms of what it was alluding to in that teaser. But no, it has such a great cast too. Because was Sophie Thatcher, who is also just in Heretic. She's so good. Jack Quaid
Oh,
channel a
yeah.
little bit of his dad in
Yeah.
this one, Dennis Quaid,
I love it.
for some of his later stuff. And I'm a huge fan of Harvey Guillen from What We Do in the Shadows,
Yeah.
Guillermo, and he's so funny in this movie.
Oh, good. Yeah, he's
I
so fun.
loved him in it. So definitely would recommend Companion. And then one film off my watch list that I watched was The Man Who Laughs. And this is a 1928 German expressionist film that is labeled as horror, but like what this is most known for is the main character is like mutilated as a child, where he has stuck this giant creepy grin on his face because he's the base for the Joker.
Oh,
So you like people have probably seen the poster or stills from this movie and were like, "Oh, that's where the Joker comes from."
yeah.
But it's also an interesting like period romance
Oh,
because it's based off of a Victor Hugo novel. So like it has a lot of Hunchback vibes,
okay.
and it has incredible costuming and set design. It has a lot of like really good German expressionist kind of visuals and stuff like that. And it's just such an interesting mixture of genres. And it doesn't have dialogue. This like it's from 1928. It doesn't have dialogue, but it does have synchronized score that they did make specifically for the film. And the music's fantastic and has a lot of emotion to it. And like at the core of it, like this person's like he was this child of a noble and
Mm.
winds up being in a carnival show because he's a clown.
Right. Well,
and he falls in love with a blind woman who's
I guess
also in the carnival. And so like that kind of dynamic because like he's hideous and she can't see that.
I love
And
carnival, like as a sort of theme.
yeah,
You know, I'll definitely watch that.
so this is I think I just watched this on YouTube. I
Okay.
think like it's old enough where there's like copies of it on YouTube, but would recommend. I did record an episode of my Wasteland watch list podcast for this because this was one of my random selections that I did off my watch list, and I really liked it, and I was pretty impressed by it. And then my last recommendation, something I rewatched, was the Maltese Falcon. I have this real nice 4K that I got of it, and it looks so crisp and in like black and white and everything. And I remember, I think I watched this in high school for the first time and was not very impressed. By you have to know going in that even the action of the movie they don't show. Like a lot of things happen off screen and stuff like
Yeah.
that, but it's very much this tense in this small space kind of noir. And this is like the blueprint for what you do with noir. Because like Sam Spade is like the along with Philip Marlowe, Humphrey Bogart is like the PI character from noir. You have a great femme fatale,
Oh,
and all the antagonists like Peter Lorre, Joel Cairo, Peter Lorre, and he's such a little man but so dangerous. Sydney Greenstreet, which I remember talking about this on a show that I did with my brother. My brother's a huge film noir fan, so he asked me, "What are some film noir I should watch?" And I'm like, I'm just like, I think I made a list of like 15 movies and I sent it to him, and we talked about this, and I'm like, he is Sidney Greenstreet's character is the basis for Wilson Fisk, the Kingpin
oh
from
wow.
like Daredevil and Spider-Man, because he's
Yeah,
a
yeah,
big,
yeah. Huh.
big in a white suit
Yeah,
kind of criminal boss, and he just has that vibe to him. And like Elijah Cook Jr. is so intense in this,
yeah.
and also because of all the John Ford movies that I watched over the course of that, I fell in love with Ward Bond. He legitimately is one of my favorite character actors from that era, and he's one of the cops in it. And I just the whole cast is fantastic. It's so iconic. It's like it's made of it's what dreams are made of. And
Yes.
just like those lines of dialogue where you're just like it's one of those things where it's like, oh, that's where that's from.
Yeah, I love when that like you rewatch that too and you're like, ah, you because I do think like so was your experience of the rewatch so different? Like were you more tense during the movie even though you knew what was going to happen and
Well, so this is I've probably watched this now 4 times.
oh, okay, okay.
And even by the second time where I watched this like post college, I got it a lot more. Because like there were some movies I watched in that cinema class that I had in high school that I've had to reassess a lot. Like I despised Raging Bull when I watched that in high school. I'm like, this was just two Italian dudes yelling the F word at each other for 2 hours.
I love you watched that in high school, by the way. That's pretty cool. We were not allowed to watch curse things in high school.
Yeah, I don't remember feel like a waiver or anything. Anything like
Cool.
because I was a junior in high school, so like this cinema class, because like
Wow.
I'm trying to remember what we watched in that class. I think the first thing we watched was Cool Hand Luke. We watched uh Fisher King, which was one of the ones that really stuck with me because I'm a huge Terry Gilliam fan.
Yeah.
And then Memento, we
Oh,
watched that. We watched Raging Bull. We had a whole entire segment on Hitchcock. So I'm trying to remember what the actual Hitchcock movies we watched in class, but then we had a homework assignment where we had to watch one outside of class and write a paper about it. And I went to my library and looked what they had, and they had North by Northwest.
oh,
So I rented that, and that was the one that I wound up writing about. And which was very different because the ones that we watched in class were very much like horror thriller kinds of things.
yeah,
And
yeah.
North by Northwest is like thriller. Like
Yes.
it's not like Psycho
Yeah, yeah,
scary
yeah.
or The Birds or anything like that. But that was such a fun class that I had in high school, and some of them obviously um I had to reassess for myself because
Yeah,
obviously you grow your palette in terms of what you like in terms of film changes. At that point, like there's certain
yeah,
things that has never changed for me. Like
same.
I
Like
still have Shrek
Casablanca.
2 and Shrek in
Oh,
my top five favorite movies.
and
Um
like Casablanca. But like for me, even watching that before I'd been in love, I really got it. And watching
yeah.
All About Eve before I was um I'm still not a broad in my like Betty Davis era, but like I got it, or it hit me
Mhm.
in a way of like, oh my God, this moved me, right? Shrek, yes, like the things that, affect you. But that's why I think that movies should be rewatched and should be like as you grow and you change. And maybe, if I'd watched Hotel Chevalier like 20 years ago, it wasn't out. But if it was out 20 years ago, maybe I wouldn't have gotten it as much.
Oh God, it was almost out 20 years
Seven, right?
ago.
Almost 20, but not quite. But you know what I mean? Maybe
Yeah,
even 18.
18 years ago watching
Who
this
knows?
movie.
But hopefully I would have definitely felt something from it for sure. And I think I would have really loved it, but I don't know if I would have understood it as much.
Mhm. Well, and this is wild because I watched the three Godfather films when I was 10.
Oh my
So,
God. Yes, too young.
because like
Too,
I've loved the first one since I was a 10-year-old.
yeah.
The Godfather Part 2 didn't click when I was a 10-year-old because one, a 10-year-old didn't want to sit there and read subtitles for half
Yeah.
the
I was gonna
movie.
say the Italy of it. Yeah, exactly.
Well, except, and that was the more interesting part of the movie to me as a kid. It's just that I had to work for it.
Yeah.
Because like as a 10-year-old, you were not processing the dour descent that the Michael's story is in that movie. There's
Oh,
something fun and exciting about the first one.
yeah.
And I feel like at least you can feel that kind of
Oh,
energy.
yeah. The turn in the,
And
when he goes into the bathroom and you feel that. Like you're like, oh my God.
well,
Exciting.
and it's the same thing. Like I didn't. It took me until rewatching Goodfellas for my Scorsese series for me to really appreciate Goodfellas,
Huh.
in the way that it is. And it was funny because like there were certain Scorsese films that really clicked with me right away. The first time I ever watched Taxi Driver, that has stuck with me.
Yeah.
And or even like at one point I'm like, I liked Casino more than Goodfellas.
Love it.
And
I
which I
really,
do love Casino
yeah, yeah.
still. But there's certain things that, you have to go back to. And I'm glad that I went back to the Maltese Falcon because it is such an impeccably directed film. Don Houston.
This
Uh
is a good host. You got back there because I took you off for a minute. I'm sorry, and then you got back.
no, it's all good. Well, and you know, it's interesting getting context for this. And Maltese Falcon is one of those kinds of films that like you might have to wait to really appreciate it because it's not the
Mm,
kind of film that like I would recommend to friends who aren't into film.
right.
Like if I'm gonna recommend a Bogart film from back then, it's probably be Casablanca because God, that movie is so funny. And like I saw that in a theater and I was legitimately laughing throughout that whole entire film. It's more accessible for just
For
like a general audience. This is a hard boiled kind of story and stuff like that. And but there's so much tension and it's so well acted and just how it's all put together.
I think that like of all the movies that we've talked about tonight, like mood and tone and
Mhm.
like yes, that movie has such a clear mood and vision. Vision, I guess, is the
Mhm.
word that people throw around, right? But it's true. It's like
Yeah,
they do what they set out to do in all of the
absolutely.
things we've discussed. Yeah.
Well, that is certainly a wrap on this wonderful discussion about Hotel Chevalier. And I did confirm my next episode is Fantastic Mr. Fox. So I'm very much looking forward to that. That's a film that I watched for the first time my senior year of high school because it was one of those things where my classmate brought it in. And when you didn't do schoolwork one day, we wound up watching Fantastic Mr.
I love
Fox.
those days of high school. Those were the best.
Yeah. So, and then Fantastic Mr. Fox, Moonrise Kingdom, a couple of short films, and then No, this series on Wes Anderson is just going to fly by so quickly compared to my commitment to John Ford. But Suke, thank you so much for coming on and joining me to talk about the short film.
It was so much fun. I love talking movies with you, and you need to tell me your tricks for remembering every single moment of every single movie you've ever watched because it is absolutely spectacular. That's for
I
another.
that is another discussion. But thank all of you out there for always tuning in and supporting your Wasteland reviewer.